Hi, the purpose of this presentation is to debrief your Myers Briggs Type Indicator assessment. My name is Dr. Nicole Price, and if you are here, it is highly likely that I am going to do a Myers Briggs assessment with your team so that you can learn more about yourself, but also about your team members. However, anyone who ever takes the Myers Briggs and uses the Myers Briggs Form Q or the Step 2 assessment can use this debrief to help you understand it better. First of all, the purpose of the Myers Briggs Type Indicator is to increase your awareness. For two reasons, though: to increase your awareness about yourself, but also to increase your awareness in how you can improve the way you interact with your team members and your family, neighbors, and friends in four specific categories: communication, decision making, change, and conflict. The other purpose of the Myers Briggs Type Indicator is so that you can have the support you need to make progress on having an actionable development plan that you feel confident that you can implement on your own in case your leader is not necessarily talking with you every day about your coaching style or your general leadership style or your dynamics between you and other people. In this session, I am going to explain the assessment, but also want to let you know that if you ever need my support, feel free to reach out at info@livelyparadox.com, and I am always happy to help. Now, there are many reasons that people engage in performance or personality assessments, excuse me. The one that I like the best is can be found in the book, The Five Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni, in which he talks about that there are five specific dysfunctions: absence of trust, fear of conflict, lack of commitment, and avoidance of accountability, and inattention to results. And many times when people will get together with a new team or someone on their team changes, they don't always consider that results will suffer if we don't take the time to build trust. Personality assessments, whichever one you choose to use, help us to improve trust on teams. Here's how. If by chance I prefer more detailed information in the way I like to communicate, and you tend to be more conceptual or broad in the way that you communicate, we likely will not understand each other. And in that lack of understanding, I might not trust the information you give me because when you give me too many details, I think you don't trust me. And conversely, when I don't give you enough details, you might think I'm irresponsible and also not trustworthy. So Myers Briggs gives us an opportunity to know what people's preferences are so that we can better understand each other and improve our norms for working together. So there are a couple things that I want you to do just to demonstrate that Myers Briggs is purely a preference. It is not an innate trait or skill. So, first, if you would please sign your name with your dominant hand. And I want you to think about how it feels when you sign your name. This is what my signature looks like using my dominant hand. I've been practicing this thing since I was in middle school, and I'm very proud of it. It is likely that you feel like it's pretty normal to sign your name. You don't even really think about it unless you don't have to sign your name very often, but otherwise, you're just probably not thinking about it. Now, I want you to sign your name with your non dominant hand and express to me how that feels for you. It likely takes you a longer time. Typically, unless you're ambidextrous, it doesn't look as good. It feels awkward, and many people grunt and groan and make all kinds of noises when I ask them to do this in person. Here's what my signature looks like with my non dominant hand. And here's what's interesting: I actually used to write with a different hand, and then I broke my hand when I was, or broke my arm actually, when I was 5 years old, and switched to the dominant hand that I use now. And still, the original hand for which I used when I first learned to write, when I am forced to write with it today, it does not look as good. Type and style are the same way. It is likely that if you break your arm, you will learn to do a few more things with your other hand. Or for people who don't have an arm, they have become quite um, astute and skilled at using one hand. For people who have no hands, they have become very skilled at using their feet. We have the capacity to adjust what our preferences are. So, again, I just want to remind you that the purpose of the MBTI is not to put anybody in a box, it is to increase awareness and ultimately to provide you an actionable development plan that you feel good about. Again, if you are going to be doing an assessment with your team, I will explain the assessment with you and them, but also provide you support going forward. I want you to first verify or validate your assessment results by guessing which letters you think represent you best. The first two sets of letters in Myers Briggs are ones that we use, are letters that represent words that we use in common everyday language: extroversion and introversion. These two letters are purely about how you like to communicate. People with preferences for extroversion tend to be initiators. They often are very expressive, meaning that you can tell what they think by looking at their faces. When they tell you that they have friends, they mean everyone. They never meet someone who's not a friend. Are often described as energetic or active, meaning you can see the energy outside, or enthusiastic. People with preferences for introversion, when going to a party, instead of initiating conversation, they prefer to receive people and are often described as contained, meaning that they likely have a poker face. When people with preferences for introversion describe their friends, they usually mean people who will loan them money or help them move. When deciding if they want to talk or not, oftentimes the energy is happening inside. They're reflecting on what they've heard instead of talking, and therefore are described as quiet. Take a guess at which one you think you are, E or I, and write it down. These two letters, again, are about our basic approach to connecting with others. It explains how we readily communicate our emotional states and experiences. Do we express them through words, or do we tend to write them down? It is a testament to the breadth and depth of our connections, how many friends we have, how deep those relationships are. And everybody has energy. It's just a matter of if you can observe that energy outside, or if it's outwardly expressed, or if it's internal. Again, take a guess at which two you think you are. The next set of letters are specifically about how you like to learn or take in information. And so when we think about learning and taking in information, the next two sets of letters are S, which stands for sensing, and N, which is for intuitive. We've already used an I for introversion, so we're going with N for intuitive. People who have preferences in the way that they learn and take in information, of sensing, generally are described as our traditionalists. These are the people who can tell us what has happened in the past. In fact, I can usually hear in S language when they say things like in the past often. When trying to learn something new, S's prefer to experience it or try it out or practice it. S's also tend to be very much rubber meets the road kind of people, very realistic and practical again. And when giving details, they are very concrete, very specific. So when giving instructions, as an example, they will tell you mile markers, they know street names, they know just about how far you need to go. People with preferences for intuition, on the other hand, tend not to speak in very concrete terms. They'll give you generalities instead of specifics. When considering how they like to learn or take in information, these people who are intuitives tend to be described as pie in the sky kind of people. What can we possibly imagine? And when wanting to learn, they don't necessarily need to experience something. You can give them the concept or the theory, and they can fill in the blanks. When thinking about what has happened in the past, intuitives are often quite frustrated by people who share things about how things used to be done. Regardless of how things used to be done, Intuitives are always thinking about how we can make things better for the future. Just so that we know, again, this is about how you learn and take in information. And so this is the type of information or the types of content and how you also share information with other people. So, how do you teach as well? These two letters are about how you perceive the world and what you tend to pay attention to. Do you tend to pay attention to the details or do you tend to be more overarching? Again, down to earth versus what can I imagine? S's or sensors tend to apply information or think about how they can apply what is being told to them, whereas intuitives think about all the possibilities. Again, when someone is not like us, if we have not done a lot of emotional intelligence work, we will not necessarily trust them if they understand the world differently than we do, especially as when you think about how we learn and like to take in information. Take a guess at which of these two letters you think you are, and then we'll move on to the third set of letters, which are specifically about how you like to make decisions. These letters are T and F. The T is for thinking, the F is for feeling. Now, the way people with the thinking personality make decisions are basically through logic and reason. If you're thinking to yourself, what other way do people make decisions? You are probably not a T. When trying to decide, T's are often very questioning. They will ask lots of questions to get a better understanding. And because of that questioning style, are often described as critical and tough. People with preferences for feeling, on the other hand, and I just want to clarify that this has nothing to do with intellectual horsepower or emotional intelligence or emotions at all. It's about decision making. So people with preferences for feeling make decisions based on values. So empathy and compassion. When trying to make a decision, they often are accommodating. And here's what I mean. If there are 10 things we need to talk about and we agree on 8, the questioning T will want to talk about the 2, while the accommodating F would prefer to talk about the 8 and actually hope we never get to the 2. They value harmony, which is why they want to be accepting, if at all possible, of the 8 things that we need to talk about, and for this reason are often described as tender. I can hear T and F language as well. Typically, T's say things like I think, whereas F's generally say things like I feel or I believe. Understand that I'm speaking in sweeping generalizations, and there are many exceptions to these rules. Want to double down on this is how we make decisions. This is not about an emotional center or moral core. T's are generally focused on being honest. It does not mean that F's are not honest or have integrity, not in any way. It just means that if they have to choose whether or not they're going to hurt your feelings or be honest, they will generally choose to be more tactful in their approaches. So a T on a clear T sometimes will say things like, I'm just being honest. And that's a good indication to me that I'm talking to a T. Fs don't generally speak in those terms. T's are often described as critical thinkers, where Fs are generally described as the people who bring folks together. Now, when making decisions, T and F is about where you start in your decision making process, not necessarily where you land. So I oftentimes, because I am a T, will go to logic and reason first, but I almost always end up with what can we do to bring more people along? The last two sets of letters, J and P, are specifically about how you like to orient yourself to the world or how you like to orient the world around you. And so J is for judging, does not mean judgmental. So try not to associate meanings to these words that Myers Briggs has chosen. J's, when planning, prefer to actually be planful. They will have a system in place. Given all the time in the world, they will start early. They have a back off schedule to let them know when they need to start, and they never jump right in. They always have a method before they approach a project. P's, on the other hand, are generally more casual with their schedule. They like to keep things open ended just in case something else comes up. When given all the time in the world, they need deadlines because they are pressure prompted. They are going to start at what would be considered the last minute to a J because they are very spontaneous and less scheduled. When approaching a project, a P or a perceiver will jump right in and are described as emergent. These two letters, again, are how we generally organize our world, about how we arrange leisure time and long term planning. So, this is not just about work, it expresses how we deal with deadlines and the degree of routine and structure that we appreciate in our daily activities. If you sequence a bunch of smaller tasks to finish larger ones and it is very systematic and structured, it is likely that you are a J. If that is not your approach and that stresses you out, it is likely that you are a P. So, what I want you to do is take a look at which letters you chose and be prepared to come into your session with your guests. Some people will not have watched this video and we will go over it again, but I think it is important for you to validate the answers that you selected or the questions that you selected on the assessment. I will see you in class, and when I do, I want you to just recognize that there are some differences in terms of how people um, assumed what their type would be versus what they guessed. And if so, there are many reasons for that, and we'll go over many of them in class. The one that I see least often is that people answer questions randomly. I know people take the assessment seriously, and most people would never do that. But there are other reasons for differences. You might not have a clear preference on the two dichotomies that I mentioned. Oftentimes, when people have a sophisticated use of style, so an example of that would be both of my parents were incredibly scheduled. And so it might seem like I have built the skill or I'm writing with my opposite hand to be scheduled as well. But my preference is to be casual and open ended. But people can't always detect that because I grew up with parents who had a different style. Certain elements are out of preference. I also don't want you to associate anything negative with those terms. It just simply means that there are extroverts, I happen to be one of them, who also is very intimate in my friend groups. While many people might consider themselves my friend, and I love that about them, when I say friend, I mean people who will loan me money or help me move. So I'm a little different from other extroverts in that way. Again, I just want to let you know that I am excited to be able to meet with you in class. And when we get together, the thing that I want you to be prepared for and excited about is that there's absolutely no reason at all for you to be worried. There are many other things that determine who you are as a person. This is just one aspect. Some of those things could be country of origin, they could be gender, they could be birth order, it could be some people think zodiacs. It could be where you lived in this country. Did you grow up in rural counties or in the city? Many things make you uniquely who you are. I am looking forward to our time together. I will put a link to another document that can help you if you want to debrief your own team and will not be using our services. But for now, thank you so much, and I appreciate you. Have a fantastic rest of your day.